Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So last night we had our first election of 2022, the primaries out of the state of Texas that will determine who is going to be on the ballot for November for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all the statewide offices, as well as Congress and the state legislatures. So we're going to do a deep dive today on last night's results. We did a stream last night, but can I say it feels so good to be back? I mean, we haven't done a video on this channel in like 8 days. I was over at CPAC, but now I'm back. And finally, and it's good to be back because we have a lot to talk about. A lot has happened. We see what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. We see what's going on last night with Biden's State of the Union, although honestly, I'm not going to even dignify that with the response. I could have done a video on that, but I think that this is more important in the long run to discuss. So we're going to get into this. We're going to talk about the bad that happened first. We're going to get to the bad news, and then we're also going to move into the good news because there is some bad news and there's also good news. There are silver linings in the results, and there were some good results that we saw as well as some disappointing ones. So we're going to get into both of those. But first, I have to tell you guys about my good friends over at Noble Gold. Now, if you watch Red Eagle Politics regularly, you will know that Noble Gold is one of our sponsors. They now have thousands of clients who found the secret of gold and silver for their retirement plans here. And for the month of March, with any qualified IRA above $20K, you'll get a 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin or a 5-ounce America the Beautiful silver coin for anything over $50K. You know what to do. Call 877-646-5347 now to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Again, noblegoldinvestments.com. So we have the state of Texas having their primaries, and I want to go through the results briefly. So Greg Abbott was in a primary. He is the current governor of Texas. Is he an all-right governor compared to the other Republican governors nationwide? Yeah, but even so, he's relatively about average, and he's apathetic to the issues of what is going on regarding the border. He is apathetic when it comes to big tech. He is not pushing back against them. In fact, he's incentivizing that they bring jobs to Austin, they bring jobs to Plano. And you see both of these factors, immigration and big tech jobs, incentivizing liberals and Democrats to pour into the state. Now, not every transplant is a liberal. I am technically a Texas transplant, and I am a Republican-aligned voter, I guess you would say, technically not registered, but there's a lot of people like me, but there could be a lot more when you look at the pie chart of who is moving to Texas. Instead, you have a lot of Democrats moving to Texas as well. People moving from Central America and Mexico, as well as India, into our southern border. We have a border crisis right now. You let in 2 million illegal aliens last year alone into America, many of which came to the state of Texas. You see what's going on with demographic change and different groups voting in different directions, and Texas is not exactly guaranteed to be a red state in the long term, but it could be. It could be if you shut down the border. It could be if you did everything possible to keep your state red, but Greg Abbott's not doing that. And a lot of Republicans woke up, and a lot of Republicans are still waking up, and Abbott got 66.4% of the vote. Incumbent Trump-endorsed governor in the Republican Party, who was well-funded, had all the money in the world, couldn't even get 2/3 of the vote because of the grassroots. Now, the problem is so many people aren't awake yet. They don't get it. A lot of the boomers, they don't get it. Greg Abbott can sign a few bills before election time and not do anything for the state for 4 more years and just capitulate to the opposition's agenda. Yeah, that's what we're getting with Greg Abbott. And as a result, he's going to be there for 4 more years at least. But I will say it is somewhat white-pilling to see the fact that a lot of people have woken up. Obviously, this would have gone to a runoff had he got under 50. I didn't expect it to go to runoff. I thought Abbott would get around 62. He got 66, and he's falling right now as the final votes come in, but it's still disappointing. And you look throughout a lot of these other races at the congressional level in particular, you look at the fact that you have Dan, red flag Dan Crenshaw, mass immigration supporter, big interventionist, doesn't even believe that Jesus is a real person. He's still getting 74% of the vote here. And you see this throughout. Kay Granger, who almost lost her primary last time, got 75% of the vote, even though she didn't really have as high profile of challengers. And you look down the list here, and you also look at the 8th district on the Republican side. That's not going to a runoff most likely. Morgan Luttrell is Dan Crenshaw 2.0, and he will win this district almost certainly. He's at 52%. They've counted almost all of the votes are in. They haven't projected it yet, but unfortunately it looks as if he is going to avoid a runoff and is going to be the presumptive nominee. So it is very unfortunate what is happening in the state of Texas through a lot of these primaries. And it is true. I mean, so many voters don't fully get it. There are voters who are waking up, and I think that you can thank the Trump movement for that. But there are so many voters who just are apathetic to what's going on, or they just don't fully get it yet, or they don't pay attention enough. And that is a problem because we are losing this country. A lot of these voters have good intentions. I guarantee you. I've talked to people on the Huffines campaign who I supported that say that pretty much everybody that they were able to talk to, they were able to convert. And this is arguably a true argument. I mean, you look at Montgomery County, which is where Trump held that rally a few weeks ago. Huffines was very active. His campaign staff was very active there, and Abbott actually underperformed there. I thought Abbott would underperform in like the rurals and maybe South Texas, but he actually overperformed there. And in like the places like Fort Worth and Montgomery County, these counties that have moved to the left a little bit, that's where Abbott technically didn't do the best job in. And it kind of gets me thinking that the people that live in the cities kind of understand the decline more than people who live isolated, people who live in the rurals who might be more conservative but also more disengaged, so they don't fully get it. Like, there's a lot of factors at play here. But beyond that point, the Attorney General's race is also interesting. Now, this is not really the best news either. Ken Paxton is forced into a runoff. Louis Gohmert arguably would be an upgrade. Paxton does have some corruption scandals. He's done some good. Everybody remembers the infamous Texas lawsuit. He's actually fought back to a certain extent, but he has a lot of corruption scandals. And George P. Bush, Jeb's son, is in a runoff with Ken Paxton. Paxton got 42% of the vote. I thought he would go to a runoff. And George P. Bush and Paxton will be facing off. Now, Paxton could still win the runoff, and he probably will win the general despite the scandals, just based off of the red wave that's ensuing, which we'll get to in a minute. But you look at George P. Bush. I mean, yeah, he's the best Bush, understandably. I mean, he endorsed Trump in 2016. He's distanced himself from his family a little bit, but you still can't trust him. He's a Bush. Being the best Bush, that's like being the best third-string quarterback. It really means nothing. You're still garbage. You're not going to be able to take your team to really anything noteworthy, and it shows. It speaks for itself. But beyond that point, the lieutenant governor's race, Patrick won easily. Beto on the Democrat side for governor also won easily, as expected. But beyond that point, there really isn't that much else negative to talk about. I'd rather talk about the positive at this point of the video, because there were many positive developments last night that do need to be discussed. Now, if you look at this, you talk about the fact that Henry Cuellar is going into a runoff with Jessica Cisneros. If Cisneros wins the runoff, Republicans will almost certainly be able to pick up the 28th district there, which could be yet another Republican flip that they could add to their column. Also, it is important to note the fact that Van Taylor, an establishment conservative who was caught cheating on his wife recently with an ISIS bride, has fallen below 50% in the primary and has been forced into a runoff. Now, that in and of itself should tell you something, that early voting is very problematic in this regard. And we need to scale it back because you have these late-breaking news stories. I mean, if everybody knew about Taylor beforehand, he would have probably been below 25%, honestly, and it really shows. But moving past that, you look at the fact that Keith Self did very well. He was the best candidate in that race. And now Taylor this morning has dropped out because he knows he has zero shot at winning the runoff, to the point where Republicans, they got one. They knocked off one incumbent, so they did that. That's good. I would have loved for them to go all out. Obviously, I knew there was really no chance at them knocking off Crenshaw or knocking off some of these other candidates. But either way, we got to keep fighting. We always have to demand more. It's good we got one, but we need to get a lot more. Beyond that point, speaking about other silver linings, keep in mind that people are angry at the establishment. They really are. And you see that in these primaries. And a lot of these incumbent Republican representatives, they're out here getting roughly like 60, 70% of the vote. They'd be in the 80s or 90s a couple years ago. So obviously we're making strides. We just hope that we can make enough strides before it's really too late. But I'm looking at what I see out of some of these primaries, and it just going up against somebody who is a machine, and a lot of these incumbents represent that. They're machines. They have all the resources in the world, and they still can't crack 70, 80% every single time. It kind of tells you that Republicans are starting to wake up, but it's not enough yet. It's not enough. But Texas, you have to understand, it's more establishmentarian state, Republican-wise. A lot of people will be like, well, Arizona's the establishment Republican state. No, it's not true. Arizona has an eclectic mix of, national populist type of Republican voters and primaries and your traditional Republicans. But Texas doesn't really have that as much as Arizona does. It is more of an establishment state come primary time. Ted Cruz won the state in the primary in 2016. Although I do believe that solid Republicans could easily win statewide elections. And this is another thing. A lot of people were saying that Huffines West would lose to Beto or something like that. It's the biggest psyop in the world. Red wave year, solid optical candidates with an actual platform in the state of Texas going up against Beto, who wants to take away oil and AR-15s in the state of Texas. He's not running the campaign that he ran in 2018. Yeah, maybe in a state like Texas, Abbott would outperform Huffines by 3 or 4 points, but it doesn't matter. I'd rather have Huffines and win by 10 than have Abbott and win by 14. That's basically the takeaway there. And a lot of people just don't get it still. Although, to be fair, a lot of these boomer voters probably didn't even know who any of the people down ballot were. But beyond that point, it's also important to note that we look at the turnout, because we talk about the red wave. Is it brewing or is it not? And this is just one primary, but so far, I say the takeaway is yes. And you can't just go off of primaries, but Republicans are, and by the way, they're still counting the votes as we speak. They're going to probably hit 2 million votes in Texas, which is more than they got in 2020 in the primary for the presidential level. For the House elections, obviously the presidential level wasn't super contested, but still in this midterm year. And you look at this, they're on track to beat out 2020 as we speak, with more votes left to report. If not, they're going to be very close to matching that, which really says something, especially given the fact that you look at past election cycles and Democrats are vastly underperforming. I mean, they turned out 2 million voters in their contentious primary in 2020. They actually turned out more than the Republicans. Obviously, partially that was because they had a competitive primary at the presidential level, whereas Republicans really didn't. But still, if you look at this and notice the fact that they only could turn out half their base that they turned out in 2020, yet Republicans have turned out the same amount, it's very telling. I mean, look at 2018. Look at the fact where Democrats, they got 40% of the vote and they only trailed Republicans by 500,000. And all the media outlets were saying Democrats are now making Texas a more competitive state. And then 2020 rolls around. Then 2022 rolls around. And it's like, we got to keep pushing. Obviously, turnout was not the highest in history compared to a presidential year, but for a midterm year, it was pretty high. And you turned out 500,000 more voters plus than you did in 2018 for either side. And pretty much all of those gains have gone directly to the Republicans. There's no way Texas is going to be competitive in 2022. I don't even think it will be competitive in 2024, but we got to get the border under control. and do something about immigration, or in the far future, it could be a problem. Far future meaning 2026, 2028, and beyond. But in the meantime, it's looking pretty good, I do have to say, in terms of that. But either way, you got to do it with the right people, because you could turn out 20 million voters in the state of Texas, but if you elect the wrong Republican, well, there you go. You don't really win anything, do you? So that's all it comes down to. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.